May 24, 1941, Denmark Strait. 5:52 a.m. HMS Hood, the largest warship in the Royal Navy, the pride of the British fleet, explodes, not damaged, not crippled, obliterated. One moment, the battlecruiser is steaming at 28 knots, her 15-inch guns trained on the German battleship Bismarck. The next moment, a fireball erupts amidships. The explosion is so massive it is visible from 20 miles away. The ship's back breaks. The bow and stern rise at impossible angles. 3 minutes later, Hood disappears beneath the waves. 1,417 men aboard. 3 survivors. Vice Admiral Lancelot Holland goes down with his ship. The captain goes down. The entire crew gone in less than 4 minutes. The wreckage sinks in 1,200 feet of water, carrying with it Britain's symbol of naval supremacy. On the bridge of HMS Prince of Wales, 4 miles away, officers watch in horror. The Hood, invincible, indestructible Hood, has been destroyed by a single salvo. The German battleship that killed her is still steaming northwest, her guns now turning toward Prince of Wales. The battle has just started, and Britain has already lost. The Bismarck is not just a battleship. She is a statement. 42,000 tons, fully loaded. 8 15-inch guns in 4 turrets. Armor, built over 12 inches thick. Speed, 30 knots, faster than any British battleship. Range, 8,000 nautical miles. She is the most powerful warship Germany has ever built. Designed to break the Atlantic convoy system that keeps Britain alive, and she has just proven she can do it. The British Admiralty has known Bismarck was coming. Intelligence reports tracked her movement from the Baltic through Norwegian waters into the North Atlantic. The entire home fleet was mobilized to intercept her. Hood and Prince of Wales were positioned in the Denmark Strait, the narrow passage between Iceland and Greenland, to block her breakout into the open Atlantic. The plan was simple. Engage Bismarck, damage her enough to slow her down, allow heavier units of the fleet to arrive, and finish her. The plan has failed catastrophically. Hood is gone. Prince of Wales is taking hits. German shells slam into the British battleship's superstructure. One penetrates the bridge, killing everyone except the captain and 2 others. Another hits aft, flooding compartments. Prince of Wales is brand new. So new her gun turrets are still experiencing mechanical failures, civilian contractors still aboard working on the systems. Captain John Leach makes the decision. Break off. Prince of Wales turns away, laying smoke, retreating from a battle she cannot win. She has scored 3 hits on Bismarck, minor damage, but she is taking punishment she cannot sustain. The engagement lasts 20 minutes. When it ends, Hood is at the bottom of the Denmark Strait, and Prince of Wales is withdrawing with heavy damage. Germany has won the first round decisively. Aboard Bismarck, the crew celebrates. They have just destroyed the symbol of British naval power. Captain Ernst Lindemann allows a ration of beer. The mood is triumphant. The Atlantic lies open. British convoys are vulnerable. The mission, to break into the convoy routes and cause maximum destruction, is proceeding perfectly. But Admiral Günther Lütjens, commanding the operation, is less optimistic. He assesses the damage from Prince of Wales's hits. One shell has penetrated Bismarck's forward fuel tanks, causing flooding and oil leakage. The ship is leaving a visible oil slick trailing behind her. Another hit has reduced her speed slightly. The damage is not catastrophic, but it is significant. More critically, Bismarck's position is now known. The British will be hunting her. Every warship in the North Atlantic will converge on her position. The element of surprise is gone. Lütjens makes a decision. The mission is compromised. Instead of proceeding to the convoy routes, Bismarck will head for occupied France, specifically the port of Brest, where German U-boats operate, where repairs can be made, where the ship can be protected by Luftwaffe air cover. It is 1,500 miles to Brest. Bismarck is damaged, leaking fuel, leaving a trail visible from the air. And between her and safety stands the entire Royal Navy. The hunt begins. In London, First Lord of the Admiralty, A.V., Alexander receives the news of Hood's destruction. The psychological impact is immediate. Hood was not just a ship, she was a symbol of British naval supremacy, the visible representation of empire, the warship that toured the world between the wars showing the flag. Her loss is a national catastrophe. Prime Minister Winston Churchill issues a direct order to the Admiralty. Sink the Bismarck. Not capture, not damage. Sink. Every available warship is ordered to converge on Bismarck's last known position. The battleships, King George V and Rodney. The aircraft carrier, Ark Royal. The battlecruiser, Renown. Cruisers from convoy escort duties. Destroyers pulled from other operations. Even Force H from Gibraltar, 1,600 miles away, is ordered to steam north at maximum speed. The scale of the response is unprecedented. The Royal Navy is abandoning convoy protection, coastal defense, every other mission, to focus on a single target. If Bismarck escapes to France, she becomes an ongoing threat. Every convoy sailing the Atlantic will be vulnerable. The entire naval balance shifts. Bismarck must be destroyed, no matter the cost. But first, she must be found. The British have a problem. The Atlantic is vast. Bismarck is fast. Weather is deteriorating. Visibility is poor. Radar coverage is limited. The German battleship has hours to disappear into the ocean's immensity. Cruisers shadow Bismarck through the evening of May 24th, maintaining contact, reporting her position. But during the night, Bismarck executes a tactical maneuver, a complete circle, reversing course, and the shadowing cruisers lose contact. By dawn on May 25th, Bismarck has vanished. The Royal Navy is searching thousands of square miles of ocean for a single ship. Aircraft launch from carriers, searching in expanding patterns. Surface ships spread out, sweeping sectors. Radio intercepts are analyzed. Intelligence tries to predict her course. Nothing. Bismarck has disappeared. For 31 hours. The most powerful battleship in the German Navy is loose in the Atlantic, her position unknown, potentially heading toward convoy routes where hundreds of merchant ships are carrying vital supplies to Britain. The Admiralty faces the nightmare scenario, losing track of the enemy's most dangerous surface raider in the world's largest ocean. If Bismarck is not found, if she reaches Brest, if she completes repairs and sails again, the Atlantic becomes a battleground Britain cannot afford. The clock is running. Bismarck is steaming toward France. The British are searching desperately. Somewhere in the grey North Atlantic, the most important naval chase of the war is unfolding, and Britain is losing. May 25, 1941. The Atlantic Ocean. Bismarck is invisible. Not literally. She is 42,000 tons of steel, 823 feet long, impossible to hide in any physical sense. But in the vast emptiness of the North Atlantic, with poor weather and limited reconnaissance assets, she might as well be a ghost. The British have lost contact for over 30 hours. The last confirmed sighting was the evening of May 24th, when shadowing cruisers reported her heading southeast. Then she vanished. Radio silence. No visual contact. Nothing. Admiral John Tovey, commanding the home fleet from HMS King George V, faces a decision with catastrophic consequences either way. Bismarck could be heading for the convoy routes to the west. She could be heading for France to the southeast. She could be circling back toward Norway. 3 possible courses, each requiring different interception strategies. Tovey's fuel situation is becoming critical. His battleships have been steaming at high speed for 2 days. They are burning oil at rates that leave little margin for error. If he guesses wrong about Bismarck's course, his ships will not have enough fuel to intercept her. They will be forced to withdraw to refuel while Bismarck escapes. The mathematics are brutal. King George V can steam perhaps another day at current speed before fuel reserves become dangerously low. After that, Tovey will have to break off the pursuit, regardless of Bismarck's position. The German battleship is winning through simple evasion. But Admiral Lutyens aboard. Bismarck makes a mistake. At 9 a.m. on May 25th, believing he has successfully evaded British pursuit, Lutyens transmits a long radio message to German naval headquarters. The message reports the engagement with Hood, assesses damage to Bismarck, and outlines his intention to make for Brest. The transmission lasts over 30 minutes, long enough for British radio direction finding stations to get a bearing. The bearing is imprecise. Radio direction finding in 1941 is not accurate enough to pinpoint a position, but it provides a rough direction. Combined with analysis of the message content, which British intelligence intercepts and partially decodes, the Admiralty concludes Bismarck is heading for France. Tovey alters course. Instead of searching westward toward the convoy routes, he commits his forces to an intercept course toward Brest. King George V, Rodney, and accompanying cruisers and destroyers turn southeast. They are now racing Bismarck toward France, trying to close the distance before she reaches Luftwaffe air cover and the protection of U-boat patrols. But they are too far behind. The geometry is unforgiving. Bismarck has a head start and is making good speed despite her damage. The British battleships, even at maximum speed, cannot close the gap before Bismarck reaches safety. Tovey needs something to slow Bismarck down. Damage her engines. Foul her propellers. Anything to reduce her speed enough for the pursuing battleships to catch up. He has one asset that might achieve this, HMS Royal, an aircraft carrier steaming north from Gibraltar as part of Force H. Royal carries ferry swordfish torpedo bombers. The Swordfish is obsolete by 1941 standards. A biplane, fabric-covered, maximum speed 138 miles per hour. It looks like it belongs in the First World War, not the Second. But it carries a torpedo, and a torpedo can damage a battleship in ways shellfire cannot. The problem: Ark Royal is still hundreds of miles from Bismarck's projected position. The window for an airstrike is closing. If Bismarck gets much closer to France, she comes under land-based Luftwaffe cover. German fighters will shred the slow-moving Swordfish before they can attack. The strike must happen soon. May 26th at the latest. And first, Bismarck must be found again. May 26th, 1941. 10:30 a.m. A Catalina flying boat from RAF Coastal Command, piloted by Flying Officer Dennis Briggs, spots a warship through broken clouds. The ship is large, moving fast, trailing an oil slick. Briggs closes to confirm identification. Anti-aircraft fire erupts from the ship. Heavy flak. The Catalina is hit but remains airborne. Briggs transmits: one battleship bearing 240 degrees, 5 miles, course 150 degrees, my position 49.33 north, 2147 west. Bismarck has been found. The position confirms she is heading for Brest. At current speed, she will reach French coastal waters by the evening of May 27th. After that, attacking her becomes exponentially more difficult. Tovey calculates the intercept. King George V can reach Bismarck by mid-morning on the 27th, barely. Fuel reserves will be at minimum. There will be no margin for extended action. One engagement, then forced withdrawal to refuel. It will have to be enough, but the ideal scenario is to damage Bismarck before the battleships arrive. Slow her down. Give the pursuing force time to close and engage under favorable conditions. That mission falls to Ark Royal. The carrier is now within striking range. At 2:50 p.m. on May 26th, 15 Swordfish launch for an attack on Bismarck. The weather is deteriorating. Wind gusting to 40 knots, heavy rain, visibility poor. Flying conditions are terrible, but there is no choice. This is the last opportunity before Bismarck reaches safety. The Swordfish fly low over storm-tossed seas, navigation by dead reckoning, and occasional glimpses through cloud. After an hour, they spot a warship. The leader signals, attack. The Swordfish dive through anti-aircraft fire, release torpedoes, turn away. Multiple hits are observed. The attack appears successful, except they have just attacked HMS Sheffield, a British cruiser shadowing Bismarck. The torpedoes, equipped with magnetic detonators, malfunction. Several explode on contact with the water. Others run erratic. Sheffield maneuvers violently, avoiding all torpedoes. No damage. But the mistake is catastrophic for morale and embarrassing for the Royal Navy. The Swordfish return to Ark Royal. Crews are debriefed. The magnetic detonators are immediately replaced with contact detonators. A second strike is prepared. At 7:10 p.m., 15 Swordfish launch again. The weather has worsened. The seas are running 30-foot swells. Wind tears at the fabric-covered aircraft. Visibility is near zero. These are not conditions for naval aviation. But there is no tomorrow. If Bismarck is not stopped tonight, she escapes. The Swordfish navigate toward Sheffield, which is still shadowing Bismarck. Sheffield guides them toward the target by radio. At 8:35 p.m., the Swordfish spot Bismarck, a massive grey shape in the twilight, her superstructure bristling with anti-aircraft guns. The attack begins. Bismarck's flak is intense. 40mm and 20mm guns open fire, filling the air with tracers. The Swordfish are slow, vulnerable, flying through a storm of steel and explosive, but they are also difficult targets. Their slow speed means predictive fire control solutions are inaccurate. Gunners expecting fast modern aircraft struggle to track biplanes plodding through the air at little over 100 miles per hour. The Swordfish attack from multiple directions, spreading Bismarck's defensive fire. They drop to wave-top height, release torpedoes at ranges of less than 1,000 yards, then bank away through the flak. Sub-Lieutenant John Moffat makes his attack run from Bismarck's port quarter. Flak bursts around his aircraft. Tracers streak past. He holds course, releases his torpedo, pulls up and away. Behind him, the torpedo runs toward Bismarck's hull. It hits, aft, near the stern. The explosion is not dramatic. No fireball, no visible catastrophic damage. Just a dull thump, a plume of water. The slight shudder of impact transmitted through Bismarck's hull, but the consequences are catastrophic. The torpedo strikes near Bismarck's rudders and propeller shafts. The blast jams the port rudder at a 12-degree angle. Damage control teams attempt to free it. They cannot. The rudder is locked. Bismarck begins turning to port. Uncontrollably, Captain Lindemann tries everything. He orders the starboard propeller reversed, trying to counteract the turn. It does not work. He orders emergency repairs. Engineers attempt to cut away the jammed rudder. They cannot reach it in the heavy seas. Divers go over the side. The conditions are impossible. 30-foot swells, near freezing water, darkness. Bismarck steams in circles, her rudder jammed, unable to steer a straight course. Her heading northwest, back toward the pursuing British fleet. The damage is not fatal. The ship is not sinking. Her engines are functional. Her guns are operational. But she cannot steer. She cannot maneuver. She cannot escape. Lutyens transmits a final message to naval headquarters. Ship unmaneuverable. We shall fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer. The chase is over. Bismarck, the pride of the Kriegsmarine, the terror of the Atlantic, is crippled and helpless in the open ocean. The Royal Navy is converging from all directions. Dawn will bring the reckoning. The ferry Swordfish should not exist in 1941. It is a relic, a biplane in an era of monoplanes. Fabric-covered wings when modern aircraft use all-metal construction. Open cockpits when enclosed canopies are standard. Maximum speed 138 miles per hour, slower than many fighter aircraft from the previous war. The Swordfish looks like it flew out of 1918, not 1941. Pilots call it the string bag because of its biplane struts and wires, because it looks held together by string. It is obsolete the moment it enters service, and yet, on the evening of May 26, 1941, this obsolete biplane achieves what modern battleships and cruisers could not. It stops the Bismarck. Understanding how requires understanding the weapon the Swordfish carries. The aerial torpedo is not new. It has been used since the First World War, but by 1941 it has evolved into a precision weapon. The torpedo dropped by a Swordfish is 18 inches in diameter, weighs 1,700 pounds, and carries a warhead containing over 400 pounds of Torpex explosive, more powerful than TNT. When that warhead detonates against a ship's hull below the waterline, it creates a bubble of expanding gas that can tear through steel plating, flood compartments, and damage machinery. Even a battleship as heavily armored as Bismarck is vulnerable below the waterline. Armor protects the sides and deck. It does not extend deep enough to protect against torpedoes striking low on the hull, but delivering a torpedo requires getting close, very close, under 1,000 yards for reliability. And approaching to that range, against a battleship bristling with anti-aircraft guns requires flying through a storm of defensive fire. This is what the Swordfish crews face on the evening of May 26th. The 15 aircraft launching from Ark Royal at 7:10 p.m. are crewed by men who know the odds. They have already flown one strike today, the disastrous attack on Sheffield. They know what Bismarck's anti-aircraft fire looks like. They know the weather is worsening. They know this is likely a one-way mission for some of them. They fly anyway. Lieutenant Commander Tim Coode leads the strike. His aircraft climbs away from Ark Royal into deteriorating weather. The carrier is pitching heavily in the swells. Launching and recovering aircraft in these conditions is dangerous, but necessary. One Swordfish crashes on launch, the crew rescued. The others get airborne and form up. The flight to Bismarck takes 45 minutes. Navigation is by dead reckoning, estimating position based on speed, heading, and time, with no visual references in the storm. The Swordfish fly at low altitude to stay below the cloud base. But that means fighting turbulence and battling wind that threatens to flip the light aircraft into the sea. At 8:35 p.m., Sheffield radios the Swordfish with an updated bearing to Bismarck. The strike aircraft turn toward the target. Visibility is perhaps 2 miles, barely enough to find a battleship, but enough. Then they see her. Bismarck is enormous. From the cockpit of a Swordfish, approaching low over the water, the German battleship looks like a floating city. Her superstructure towers above the waves. Her gun turrets, each turret larger than the entire Swordfish, track the incoming aircraft. Her hull stretches over 800 feet, grey steel against grey sea, almost invisible in the fading light, and every anti-aircraft gun on the ship is firing. The flak begins at 4,000 yards. Bismarck's heavy anti-aircraft guns, 150mm weapons designed to engage high-altitude bombers, fire proximity-fused shells that detonate in airbursts, filling the sky with shrapnel. The lighter guns, 40mm and 20mm cannons, fire streams of tracers, creating webs of fire that the Swordfish must penetrate. The problem for Bismarck's gunners is that their fire control systems are calibrated for fast modern aircraft. The predictive calculations assume targets traveling at 300 miles per hour or more. The Swordfish, plodding along at barely over 100 miles per hour, confound these calculations. Shells explode where the Swordfish should be, but are not. Still, the volume of fire is terrifying. Sub-Lieutenant Charles Friend, flying as observer in one Swordfish, later describes it. The sky was full of tracer coming at us from every angle. The noise was incredible, even over the engine. I could see the flak bursts, could feel the shock waves from near misses. I honestly thought we had no chance of surviving. The Swordfish split into sub-flights, attacking from different directions to divide Bismarck's defensive fire. Some approach from the port side, some from starboard, some from astern. The coordinated attack forces the German gunners to engage multiple targets simultaneously, reducing the concentration of fire on any single aircraft. The attackers drop to wave-top height, flying at 50 feet above the water, sometimes lower. At this altitude, they are below the optimal firing angle for many of Bismarck's guns. They are also in the turbulence created by the battleship's passage through heavy seas. The air is rough, unpredictable, dangerous. Lieutenant Percy Gick makes his run from the starboard side. His Swordfish shudders through flak bursts. Tracers stream past the wings. He holds course, watching the range close. 800 yards, 700, 600. At 500 yards, he releases. The torpedo drops away, hitting the water with a splash, its propeller engaging. The weapon running straight toward Bismarck's hull. Gick banks hard left, pulling away, feeling the aircraft shudder as fragments from a near-miss flak burst tear through the fabric wing. The Swordfish keeps flying. The fabric covering is so light that shrapnel often passes through without causing critical damage. Behind him, the torpedo runs true. It misses. Bismarck's evasive maneuvers, even limited by her earlier damage, are enough to avoid some torpedoes. Other aircraft are not so fortunate. Lieutenant Ken Patterson's Swordfish takes a direct hit from a 40mm shell. The round punches through the lower wing, severing control cables. The aircraft becomes difficult to control but remains airborne. Patterson completes his attack run, drops his torpedo, a miss, then nurses the damaged aircraft back toward Ark Royal. Sub-Lieutenant John Moffat attacks from the port quarter. His approach is nearly perfect, coming out of the twilight, low over the water, at an angle that minimizes Bismarck's ability to bring guns to bear. The flak is lighter on this approach vector, though still intense. Moffat's observer, Sub-Lieutenant John Dusty Miller, watches the range close. 400 yards, 350. At 300 yards, Moffat releases. The torpedo enters the water cleanly, running at 40 knots, depth set for 12 feet. It takes 20 seconds to cover the distance to Bismarck. The explosion occurs at 9:15 p.m. after port side. Near the stern, from Moffat's aircraft now turning away, the hit looks unremarkable. A plume of water, a flash, no dramatic secondary explosions, no visible catastrophic damage. Just another hit among the 2 or possibly 3 torpedoes that strike Bismarck during the attack. But this particular torpedo, Moffat's torpedo, hits in exactly the wrong place. Or the right place, depending on perspective. The blast occurs adjacent to Bismarck's steering gear compartments. The explosion does not penetrate the armor. The belt is too thick. But the shockwave transmits through the hull structure into the steering machinery. The port rudder, already damaged earlier in the day by near-miss bomb damage, jams hard over. The mechanical linkages that control the rudder are severed. The hydraulic systems lose pressure. Bismarck begins turning uncontrollably to port. On the bridge, Captain Lindemann immediately recognizes the disaster. A jammed rudder is catastrophic for any ship. For a battleship trying to evade pursuit in the North Atlantic, it is a death sentence. He orders emergency measures. Engineers are dispatched to the steering compartments. They find flooding, damaged machinery, and the rudder mechanism completely jammed. Manual control is impossible. The forces on A. Rudder at speed are too great for human strength. 2. Overcome. Attempts are made to steer using the propellers, running one shaft, faster than the other to create differential thrust. This works for aircraft and small vessels. It does not work for a 42,000-ton battleship with a rudder jammed at 12 degrees. The ship continues turning to port regardless of propeller settings. Divers are sent over the side to attempt to cut away the rudder or free the mechanism. In 30-foot seas, in darkness, in near-freezing water, the task is impossible. The divers cannot even reach the rudder, let alone work on it. By 10 p.m., Bismarck is steaming in a wide circle, her bow pointing northwest, directly back toward the pursuing British fleet. Her engines are functional. Her guns are operational. Her armor is intact, but she cannot steer. She cannot escape. Admiral Lütjens understands the situation. He drafts a message to German naval headquarters. Ship unmaneuverable. We shall fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer. The message is transmitted at 10:40 p.m. It is intercepted by British Signals Intelligence. The Admiralty now knows Bismarck is crippled. The swordfish return to Ark Royal. All aircraft recover safely despite damage to several. The crews are debriefed. They report multiple hits, exact number uncertain. The strike is assessed as successful. Though the extent of damage to Bismarck is unknown, it will not be known until later that one torpedo, from one obsolete biplane, has accomplished what the entire British fleet could not. It has stopped Bismarck. The hunt is over. The execution is about to begin. May 26, 1941. 11 hours p.m. Aboard Bismarck, the crew understands they are going to die. Not immediately. Not tonight, but soon. The mathematics are inescapable. The ship cannot steer. She is circling helplessly in the North Atlantic, while the entire Royal Navy converges on her position. Dawn will bring battleships. By noon, Bismarck will be on the bottom of the ocean. The crew knows this. Captain Lindemann knows this. Admiral Lutyens knows this. But German naval tradition does not permit surrender. The ship will fight until the ammunition is exhausted, until the guns are silenced, until the sea claims her. The night of May 26, 2027 is spent preparing for the inevitable. Damage control parties work throughout the ship, shoring up weakened bulkheads, preparing pumps, organizing firefighting equipment. Not because they believe they can save the ship, they cannot, but because discipline and training demand they try. The engineering spaces continue operating at full capacity. The engines are undamaged. The boilers produce steam. The propellers turn. Bismarck maintains speed, even though she cannot steer a straight course. The engineering crew, deep in the bowels of the ship, work their watches as if this were a normal patrol. Above decks, gun crews prepare their weapons. Ammunition is brought up from magazines. Fire control systems are checked and rechecked. The main battery, 8 15-inch guns, is loaded and ready. Secondary batteries are manned. Anti-aircraft positions are reinforced. If Bismarck is going to die, she will die fighting. Some crew members write letters. These will never be delivered. There is no way to get mail off a doomed ship in the middle of the Atlantic. But men write them anyway. Letters to wives, to parents, to children they will never see again. The letters are found later when the wreck is located. Preserved in sealed compartments, final words from men who knew they were writing their own epitaphs. At midnight, Lutyens addresses the crew over the ship's loudspeaker system. His message is brief. The ship is damaged. The enemy is closing. They will fight with honor. They will uphold the traditions of the German Navy, for the fatherland. For the Führer, the crew responds with 3 cheers. Discipline holds. Morale, incredibly, remains intact. But in the quiet moments, alone in their compartments, men face the reality. They are 700 miles from land. The nearest German forces, U-boats from the French Atlantic bases, are too far away to provide assistance. Luftwaffe aircraft might reach this far, but only in daylight, and even then air support cannot prevent what is coming. British battleships are converging from multiple directions. King George Theifer from the northwest, Rodney from the west, Force H, including Renown, from the south. Cruisers are already in contact, shadowing Bismarck, reporting her position, waiting for the heavy units to arrive. Through the night, British destroyers harass Bismarck. They close to torpedo range, launch attacks, then withdraw before Bismarck's secondary batteries can destroy them. It is not an attempt to sink the battleship. Destroyer torpedoes lack the power to penetrate her armor belt, but to prevent her crew from resting, to disrupt damage control efforts, to maintain pressure. The destroyer attacks come at irregular intervals. Torpedoes slice through the darkness. Most miss. A few hit, detonating against armor too thick to penetrate, causing superficial damage. Bismarck's anti-aircraft guns fire at the destroyers, illuminating the night with tracers and muzzle flashes. One destroyer, HMS Cossack, closes to 3,000 yards, suicidally close, and launches torpedoes. Bismarck's 5-inch guns fire back, near misses, throwing up columns of water that drench Cossack's deck. The destroyer escapes undamaged. The harassment achieves its objective. Bismarck's crew gets no rest. Exhaustion accumulates. Men who have been at action stations for 36 hours reach their limits. Some fall asleep at their posts despite the noise and chaos. Others operate on adrenaline and willpower. By 3 a.m. on May 27th, Bismarck has been under constant attack or threat of attack for 8 hours. The crew is exhausted. The ship is damaged, not critically, but enough to reduce combat effectiveness. The rudder remains jammed. The heading is still roughly northwest, toward the British fleet. At 4:01 a.m., the destroyers withdraw. Not because they have exhausted their torpedoes, though some have, but because the battleships are approaching. The destroyers pull back to avoid being caught in the crossfire of a capital ship engagement. Silence settles over the ocean. The guns stop firing. The torpedo attacks cease. Bismarck steams alone in the pre-dawn darkness, her damaged rudder forcing her into a slow turn, her crew waiting. Dawn comes at 6:30 a.m. Grey light spreads across a grey ocean. Visibility is poor, heavy clouds, intermittent rain, wind still gusting over 30 knots. The seas are running 15 to 20 feet. Not a storm, but rough enough to complicate gunnery. At 7 a.m., lookouts on Bismarck spot shapes on the horizon. Northwest, 2 large warships. Range, approximately 25,000 yards, 12 miles. The shapes resolve as they close. Battleships, King George V and Rodney. Behind them, more ships. Cruisers Norfolk and Dorsetshire taking positions to observe and deliver finishing attacks if needed. Destroyers on the flanks. Admiral Tovey, commanding from King George V, has brought overwhelming force. 2 battleships against 1. The British ships are undamaged, fully supplied, with complete freedom to maneuver. Bismarck is crippled, exhausted, unable to escape, but still dangerous. Her guns are operational. Her fire control is functioning. Her armor is largely intact. If Bismarck's gunnery is accurate, she can still hurt the British ships. Tovey's orders to his fleet are explicit. Close the range. Do not engage in a long-range gunnery duel where Bismarck's superior fire control might give her an advantage. Close to medium range, 10,000 yards or less, and overwhelm her with volume of fire. At 8:47 a.m., Rodney opens fire. Range, 23,000 yards. Her 16-inch guns, larger than Bismarck's 15-inch, fire in salvo. The shells take 30 seconds to cross the distance, falling in columns of spray near Bismarck. King George V opens fire moments later. Her 14-inch guns add to the barrage. Bismarck returns fire. Her forward turrets, Anton and Bruno, engage Rodney. The German gunnery is immediately accurate. The third salvo straddles Rodney, shells landing close enough to drench her deck with spray. But Bismarck is at a severe disadvantage. She cannot maneuver. Her jammed rudder forces her to steam in a predictable path. The British ships can maneuver freely, can adjust range and bearing, can complicate Bismarck's fire control solutions. And there are 2 of them. Bismarck's fire control can only effectively engage 1 target at a time. While she fires at Rodney, King George V fires at her unopposed. The battle unfolds with brutal inevitability. The British ships close the range. 18,000 yards. 15,000. 12,000. At shorter ranges, their fire becomes more accurate. Shells begin hitting Bismarck. The first significant hit strikes at 9:02 a.m. A 14-inch shell from King George V penetrates Bismarck's forward superstructure, exploding near the fire control station. The blast kills most of the forward fire control team. Bismarck's gunnery immediately becomes less accurate. More hits follow. Rodney's 16-inch shells smash into Bismarck's superstructure. One destroys the forward fire control director. Another hits the bridge, killing most of the command staff. Admiral Lutyens dies in this explosion. Captain Lindemann survives, but is badly wounded. By 9:30 a.m., Bismarck's main armament is silenced. Not destroyed, the turrets are still intact, protected by heavy armor, but the fire control systems are wrecked. The guns can still fire, but without accurate fire control, they cannot hit anything at combat ranges. The British ships close to 9,000 yards. Point-blank range for battleship combat. They are now firing at ranges where even mediocre gunnery cannot miss. Bismarck is being destroyed. 9:30 a.m. Bismarck is dying, but she will not sink. The British battleships have closed to less than 4 miles. At this range, battleship guns fire almost horizontally. The shells do not arc through the sky, but slam directly into the target. Rodney and King George V are pouring fire into Bismarck at a rate of dozens of shells per minute. The German battleship is being systematically destroyed. Her superstructure is a twisted wreck. Fires burn throughout the upper decks. Her main gun turrets, though still intact, are silent. The fire control systems that aim them are gone. Secondary batteries continue firing sporadically, but without coordination, without effect. Yet, Bismarck remains afloat. This is the paradox of naval gunnery against heavily armored ships. Shells can destroy everything above the armor belt, superstructure, gun directors, masts, everything. But penetrating the main armor belt to reach the vital machinery spaces below is extraordinarily difficult. Bismarck's armor scheme, designed by some of the best naval engineers in Germany, is proving its worth even in defeat. The main armor belt, 12 inches of hardened steel, is angled to deflect incoming shells. At medium ranges, even 16-inch shells from Rodney have difficulty achieving perpendicular impact angles necessary for penetration. The shells hit, transfer their energy, and either ricochet or break apart without penetrating to the interior. This means Bismarck can be wrecked without being sunk. Her crew can be killed. Her weapons can be destroyed, but the hull itself, protected by armor, remains intact. The engine rooms continue operating. The boilers produce steam. The ship continues making way, even though she is effectively out of action. Admiral Tovey, watching from King George V's bridge, grows frustrated. His battleships have been firing for nearly an hour. Thousands of shells have been expended. Bismarck is clearly defeated. She has not fired her main guns in 20 minutes, but she will not sink, and Tovey has a fuel problem. King George V has been steaming at high speed for 3 days. Her fuel reserves are approaching critical levels. If she continues this engagement much longer, she will not have enough fuel to return to port. The nearest refueling station is over 400 miles away. Running out of fuel in the mid-Atlantic is not an option. At 10:15 a.m., Tovey orders his battleships to cease fire and withdraw. The decision is controversial. Some officers argue for continuing the bombardment until Bismarck sinks, but Tovey is resolute. He has accomplished the primary mission. Bismarck is defeated, no longer a threat to Atlantic convoys. Whether she sinks immediately or later is secondary to ensuring his own ships return safely. King George V and Rodney turn away, heading northeast toward refueling points. But the engagement is not over. The cruiser Dorsetshire, which has been observing the battle from a distance, closes on the crippled Bismarck. Cruiser armament, 8-inch guns, cannot penetrate Bismarck's armor, but Dorsetshire carries torpedoes. At 10:20 a.m., Dorsetshire launches torpedoes from Bismarck's starboard side. Range, less than 2 miles. 2 torpedoes hit, exploding against the hull below the waterline. Dorsetshire circles to the port side, launches more torpedoes. Another hit. These torpedo hits achieve what an hour of battleship gunfire could not. Torpedoes explode below the waterline, below the armor belt, where the hull plating is thinner. The explosions tear open compartments, allowing massive flooding. Bismarck's list, she has been listing to port throughout the battle, increases dramatically. On Bismarck's decks, the surviving crew faces the end. The ship is clearly sinking. Fire and smoke consume most of the superstructure. Flooding is uncontrollable. The list is approaching 30 degrees, making movement on deck nearly impossible. Captain Lindemann, wounded but still functioning, gives the order to abandon ship. Then, recognizing the impossibility of organized evacuation from a ship listing heavily and surrounded by fire, he releases the crew, every man for himself. Sailors jump into the Atlantic. The water temperature is 48 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to kill in minutes without survival gear. The men wear life jackets, but in the heavy seas, survival time is limited. They struggle away from the sinking ship, knowing that when she goes down, the suction could drag them under. Some crew members remain aboard. By choice or by injury, they stay with the ship. In the engineering spaces, men continue working even as water rises around them. In some flooded compartments, crew members trapped below decks wait for the end. The scuttling charges are blown. German naval doctrine requires that ships not fall into enemy hands intact. Explosive charges placed throughout the ship's interior are detonated, opening the hull to the sea, ensuring the ship will sink even if British attempts to save her were made, though no such attempts are planned. At 10:36 a.m., Bismarck capsizes. She rolls to port, her starboard side rising out of the water, exposing the red anti-fouling paint below the waterline. For a moment, she hangs suspended, keel upward. Then she slides beneath the waves, stern first, disappearing into the Atlantic. The position, 48 degrees 10 north, 16 to 12 west. Depth, 15,000 feet. Time from first engagement with Hood to sinking, 74 hours. Dorsetshire and the destroyer Maori approach to rescue survivors. Hundreds of men are in the water, struggling in the swells, waving, shouting. The British ships begin pulling men aboard, hauling exhausted sailors up scramble nets. Then, at 11:40 a.m., a lookout on Dorsetshire spots a periscope. The sighting is unconfirmed. It may have been debris, a visual illusion in the rough seas, but the threat of U-boat attack is real. German submarines operate from French Atlantic ports, and while none were in position to help Bismarck during the battle, they could be approaching now. Captain Benjamin Martin of Dorsetshire makes an agonizing decision. He orders rescue operations terminated and the ship to withdraw at maximum speed. Remaining survivors in the water are abandoned. Dorsetshire has rescued 85 men. Maori has rescued 25. Other ships pick up a few more. A U-boat and a German weather ship rescue another 5. Total survivors from Bismarck's crew, 115 men out of over 2,000. Among the dead, Admiral Lutyens, Captain Lindemann, nearly every officer. Most of the crew, men who went down with the ship, who drowned in the freezing Atlantic, who were too injured to save themselves, who simply ran out of strength in the cold water. The loss is catastrophic for the Kriegsmarine. Not just the ship, though losing Germany's most powerful battleship is a strategic disaster, but the trained crew. Naval personnel take years to train. Bismarck's crew represented some of the best trained sailors in the German Navy. They cannot be replaced. The strategic consequences unfold quickly. Germany's surface fleet, already limited, loses its most capable unit. The remaining capital ships, Tirpitz, Scharnhorst, Gneisenau, are effectively confined to Norwegian waters, unwilling to risk the fate that befell Bismarck. The Atlantic convoy routes remain under British control. Hitler, enraged by the loss, forbids further surface raider operations into the Atlantic. The German Navy's focus shifts to U-boats. The surface threat to British convoys, which Bismarck represented, is neutralized. For Britain, the sinking is a strategic and psychological victory. The loss of Hood has been avenged. The threat Bismarck posed is eliminated. The Royal Navy has demonstrated that no matter how powerful a German surface ship might be, it cannot survive against the concentrated might of the British fleet. But the cost is noted. It required the mobilization of dozens of warships, hundreds of aircraft, the expenditure of thousands of shells and torpedoes, and 3 days of intensive operations to sink one battleship. The resources committed to hunting Bismarck were pulled from convoy escort, coastal defense, and other vital missions. If Germany had multiple Bismarcks operating simultaneously, the strain on British naval resources would be unsustainable. Fortunately for Britain, Germany does not have multiple Bismarcks. Tirpitz, Bismarck's sister ship, will remain in Norwegian fjords for most of the war. A threat in being, but never risked in open Atlantic operations. The wreck of Bismarck remains undiscovered for 48 years. In 1989, oceanographer Robert Ballard, who previously located Titanic, finds the wreck 15,000 feet deep on an underwater mountain. The ship is upright, surprisingly intact, resting on the seabed. The armor belt shows remarkably few penetrations. Most damage is above the waterline, confirming that British shells wrecked the superstructure but did not sink the ship through armor penetration. The condition of the wreck fuels debate. Was Bismarck sunk by British action or scuttled by her crew? Survivors insist the scuttling charges were blown, that the ship was sunk by her own crew to prevent capture. British sources maintain that the torpedo hits from Dorsetshire caused fatal flooding. The truth is likely both. Bismarck was doomed by torpedo damage. Scuttling accelerated the inevitable. Whether she sank 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later is immaterial. The result was predetermined the moment her rudder jammed. What matters is not how she sank, but what her sinking meant. The hunt for Bismarck represents naval warfare transitioning from battleship dominance to a combined arms approach. Aircraft, obsolete biplanes, crippled the most powerful battleship afloat. Battleships delivered the killing blows, but only after air power made them vulnerable. The lesson is clear. Battleships alone cannot control the seas. Air power, submarines, coordinated fleet operations, these are the future. Bismarck's destruction marks the beginning of the end for battleship-dominated naval strategy. For the men who died in the cold Atlantic, British and German, the strategic lessons matter little. They fought their ships. They followed orders. They died doing their duty. Hood's crew, 1,400, 14 dead. Bismarck's crew, over 1,900 dead. Nearly 3,000 men killed in 74 hours of naval combat. The mathematics of industrial warfare, where ships costing tens of millions of pounds and crewed by thousands can be destroyed in minutes. The Atlantic continues its indifferent role. The convoys sail. The war continues. But the battleship age, already dying, takes another step toward obsolescence in the cold waters where Bismarck made her final turn.